Hello, Guyana, and welcome back to our coverage of Budget 2024. We just want to bring you some comments from some of the speakers that spoke late in the evening, where we know that you didn't get a chance to hear from them. So we're going to chat with MP Ricky Ramsroop and MP Christopher Jones. First off, we've got MP Ramsroop with us here, and he's going to give us, MP, why don't you give us some of your main points from your presentation that you thought really you want to resonate with the viewers back home?
Thank you, Aslan, and my friend Shanika, for having us here. Look, it's the first one I want to deal with here is the gold sector. What we have seen over the years from 2020 to 2023, I've examined the report, and this is all information is coming from the Bank of Guyana. So these are not reports that we have been making. And also we're using the statistics in their budget presentation. And you're seeing from 2020 to 2023, there's a steady decline of the gold sector. Not a decline, a steady decline of the gold sector. And this is very alarming because in the budget presentation, in the budget speech of the Honorable Minister, he mentioned that gold export has 52% responsible for the export of non-oil GDP of the non-oil sector. And if gold performance, as he says, is 6.5%, therefore the non-oil sector is in deep trouble. And that is what I want to bring home. So we are not talking here only the oil sector, the non-oil sector. The non-oil sector is where I really focus on, because these are the sector when oil is finished, is going to remain with us, that we have to create. So I did not see in this plan, if they so have one, for the sustainability of the gold sector. That is one. All we're hearing is that the big companies can come online. We see Troy Resources have been closed down. So my thing is here is that why is it that this Troy Resources was closed down or leave Guyana? And why is it only that OMI now is saying that they have found so much ounces of gold? And they keep doing this over 3 years now, that this will come online, that will come online. They're already in the 4th year. So, and then I look at forestry. And forestry also show the same thing, because I had to look at the export volume. Because the local volume, we weren't going to get the right figure for that. So I look at the export volume, because the export, this is one of the agency or a sector that really bring in the, what we call foreign exchange to our economy. And to look at the performance, it shows also a steady decline, where 2023 is probably going to be one of the worstest performance of the sector, because they are not addressing the simple issue. You have, well, how do I put this, Aslan? It's what you call old wine in new bottle. It is the old wine in new bottle, because it's the same set of people that are there for years.
Yeah.
So they're not seeing behind some of the policies, and despite stakeholders complain, they are not addressing the issue as they should.
I think in your budget speech, like you're outlining here, you really did hit home the issue, particularly of forestry and the gold sector, because what you practically did was use their numbers and show them that under their stewardship, all these sectors have declined, and they have showed no plans, despite the budget is as large as it is, to pump money into those sectors. I know you as well touched on the oil and gas sector. Let's talk a little about that.
Before I go there, before you go there, I wanted to, because I have to speak to the stakeholders of this country.
Correct.
And we have a plan. And within my speech, only because I have 15 minutes, but we have a plan for the gold sector. How are we going to revive this?
Yeah.
We have to ensure, because the small miners are the ones who are contributing towards the most here in this country. So what we will do, Aslan, we are going to give them more lands. We are going to work with them. We're going to bring them to what you call the decision-making table.
Yeah.
So after to have a say in our country, we'll ensure to address the same issue that the we'll create a level playing field. I want to put it this way. We want to create a level playing field So the same benefit that the larger guys are getting, the smaller guys must get the same thing. And that's how you create the balance. You do not kill the goose that lays the golden egg, which is the small miners.
Yeah, because I mean, it has been a big complaint over the last couple of years. Small gold miners are talking about as well lands being taken back from them. And you know, this, and just as you were saying, when you do look at the gold board's performance and where they're getting their money from, it is the small miners who are really bringing in what is coming into the gold board.
And you're absolutely right. And we wanted to do at a macro policy level. And this is what I was talking to the leader of the opposition, that when we have to create things differently, we're going to be doing like the refinery, the gold refinery, more value added into these sectors. And this is where we have to go, because we're having the oil money now. We can push in this thing and help to build those industry to make it more sustainably. So we are going to be like things like the mint factory, which, as one who know much about the mint factory, that can match the US dollar as a gold reserve bill. It will rise your reserve, your value of your money. The forestry sector, we are going to change this tenure, the land tenure. That's been affecting. Every time you have to go renew your land, you're always unsure of your investment. And forestry, on the opposite of gold, forestry investment is much more of a long term. So you have to secure that investment. How do you do that? Is by increase your land tenure. We did it as the AP and UFC from 2 years to 3 years. Despite we said 5 years, but we were blocked by the same people that are sitting there. But we are going to change that. We're going to put it to 5 years for the small operators, and the large operators, they should have 15 years and above. Based on your performances. And that is what, so you will have to secure your investment so that you can have a long-term plan. And your question, sorry.
I wanted you to give us a little bit as well on the oil sector, because I know you did talk on that.
So the oil, I was basically focusing on the environmental aspect of the oil, really. Because we know this is how we call it a no EIA government. They don't believe in the ESIA. And the ESIA, both for the gas to show project, which we're asking them for, they're not telling us or give us an EIA. Even to the EPA directors, I'm a bit disappointed with him, but I know that he doesn't carry that burden. He's been directed by somebody else. But they clearly state that they don't require an EIA for the gas to show project. But you have to, because that's a massive project. And the thing is the government has moved that project from what you call a safe zone to an unsafe zone where more people are, and the river are so busy to pass that gas through there is very dangerous. They don't have a oil spill management plan. A gas leak management plan. They don't have a financial management plan. And these are some of the things I pointed out yesterday. Also, the oil spill, the $2 billion that they said they receive, we asked them to provide evidence, and there's a litigation, and we will support the litigants of this. And that's what I was stating yesterday. We're going to support the litigants for the government to show us the proof of where that $2 billion is. Do you know what the government did? The government of Guyana, the PPPC, filed with ExxonMobil to block that litigation for them not to show us that the proof that the money was there, $2 billion for the oil spill. And $2 billion is a joke. If you look at the Macondo oil spill, the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, you will see go to 100 to 200 billion US dollars. And you're talking about $2 billion. You are set up here. What you have done to our country and to our neighbors, as I was speaking about, the outer regions under the coast and the other Caribbean countries, you have posed a threat to them in the future.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, on that topic, we heard the vice president say that when asked whether he would push for the release of that $2 billion guarantee, that the EPA, that the court doesn't necessarily have jurisdiction, that they're willing to file on that in that regard, and that he himself doesn't have any power to get the EPA to release that information. What's your take on this, the stance by the vice president?
That is one of the most lamest excuses. EPA is a semi-autonomous agency that is being governed by the country, the Ministry of Governance, under their construct of the government. EPA is not a private organization.
Correct.
It is part of a government organization. So they can request. They have been financed. They have budget coming under our thing. Why they can't ask them a question to produce the evidence that there is a $2 billion? Because there's none. It is a fake. They only said that there's a $2 billion guarantee. There's nothing there. If there's something there, I want them to tell me or show us in public that there's documents that has $2 billion.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Run out of time. But the important thing here, Shanike and Elston, with all of this here that I spoke about in terms of the non-oil sector, is really to keep a sustainability of these sector so that they will becomes important revenue earner for our country. You know, I've mentioned that, you know, that the budget about $1.146 trillion, which is our budget was quarter of that. This budget, and I really wanted to term it a $3,000 budget. And I've listened to your speech at the Boardroom Court, and you said $100 per day.
Yeah.
And I want the people to know and to understand that the budget here, the pensioners and the public assistants are receiving $100 per day out of $1.146 trillion. You guys are receiving $100 per day, and I want to thank you, Aslan, for putting it such a simple term, which people don't understand. Last night when I went home, I didn't realize people were watching me so much. The guy says, you know, the $100 a day might be less because it said 30 days and someone have 31 days.
Mm-hmm.
So right away I said, all right, boss, I think you understand. You understand. But you know, coming to the public servants, which is the most important thing, because human capital development is what's important.
Vital.
And we are not seeing that. I am so disappointed. I am so disappointed that they are spending. You know, I mentioned inside the budget that they will be eating the roads. If people are going to eat the roads, because they tell us that when we were building roads, now they're building more than that we have. So I said maybe they come up with a solution or an invention or to make road edible. You understand? And you know, we have found out, Edlan, and you know this as economists, that public infrastructure projects is where most of the corruptions happen.
Yeah.
And in the world showing that 16% of corruption come from public infrastructure projects.
Mhm.
In Guyana, we probably have about 40% already.
Or more.
And given this budget here, we're going to increase by 50%. I have no doubt about it.
Correct. All right. I want to thank you, MP, for sharing with us, you know, as we recap what you talked about last night. We want to bring on our next MP who will talk to us as well. He was here last evening giving his budget speech, our chief whip, and we will have him come on so we can talk to him about his budget speech. Welcome to you. You know, we're making movements very quickly here today. I want to start frontal with you. Your term, you said that we have a Cadillac economy, but we are living as if we are on a donkey cart economy. Let's talk about that.
All right. So good afternoon, good afternoon, viewers. So essentially, the term was coined by former President Dr. Cheddi Jagan.
Yeah.
And at the time, he was essentially heckling the PNC administration.
Mhm.
That essentially the PNC wants to live a Cadillac lifestyle. But
On a
at the
dance
time,
Yeah.
they claimed that the Ghana economy wasn't
Was a
doing so
donkey
well.
cart.
So he referred to the economy at the time as a donkey cart economy.
Mhm.
So
We're
I
on the reverse.
juxtapose that exactly to what we have now, because
Mhm.
obviously during that time, Guyana was not an oil producing country.
Correct.
The previous year at that time, Guyana was not um, dubbed a nation in which had the highest GDP of the world.
Mhm.
And then in that same year, Guyana was not projected for some 34.4% growth. And then, of course, Guyana at the time wasn't projected a few years after that to have as much as 100% growth. So that's why I reversed the terminology used by him to say that Guyana now has a Cadillac economy, but it is the People's Progressive Party Civic who has the Guyanese people living a donkey cart lifestyle, as adumbrated by them with the allocations that they would have made to public servants, 6.5% increase, which was tax. So unfortunately for me, last night I ran out of time.
Yeah.
Because when I was now about to go into the second phase of my presentation, I was dealing with those public servants who I was illustrating the difference between their salaries of November 2023 versus their salaries of January 2024. You know, the PPP always do this trickery. At the end of the year, they give the 6.5%, which is retro back to the beginning of the year. So obviously public servants would receive their salary with a lump sum.
Yeah.
And feeling all good and the government get praises. But after that, the reality steps back in the very next month. So I had a payslip of a member of the Guyana Police Force, a member of the Guyana Fire Service. I had a payslip of a staff member of the Ministry of Social Services. I had a health professional from the Ministry of Health, and so forth. And the numbers in terms of when they looked at the salary in January, the figures there are between 3,850, 4,122, 5,100, 4,852, 3,975 respectively. That is the increase. So a lot of public servants who received their salaries in January 2024 were shocked because they were looking for this big, much touted and propagandized by the National Communications Network and DPI and pro-government media outfit. They were now looking for this big increase that Irfan Ali went on television and tell all on sundry that this is the best thing next to sliced bread.
Yeah.
And as I spoke about the range of different public servants, these are policemen who they love to say that the men and women in the uniform and how they have respect for them. And that is the wages and salary. Mind you, these 4, 3, 5 respectively figures represent part of their overall salary.
Yeah.
The policeman's salary now is 106,500 something that is. The other person is a teacher, and her salary is now 91,000.
and acknowledged as honorable members. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing honorable about the loans from the student of during her time in government. And I'm also wondering, Mr. Speaker, whether ministers and government workers lightly, and thought it best to seek higher education to perform better. But I understand, Mr. Speaker, with the abysmal state that we found education in 2015, and the mediocre attempt by the current Minister of Education, in fact, the entire government, to properly tackle the myriad of problems in the education sector, along with a seemingly contempt for the University of Guyana, and a penchant for making up universities such as University of Iflok, and paying persons to write their dissertation, or as Papa Jagapat loves to do, run around happy to receive honorary doctorates, to pretend to be a doctor. They really cannot understand the necessity of leaders and persons in leadership recognizing the need to be better informed and better educated so that they can serve their nation properly. And as coined so eloquently by my colleague, that what we have are a group of one-subject CXCs frowning upon persons choosing to get a better education. But I cannot blame them, Mr. Speaker, because how exactly can you expect anything of substance as empty vessels always make the loudest noises? While it may appear funny, we are really in a sad place as a country, and we must demand more from those who seek to lead us. A $1 trillion budget, and not one of the ministers, not the Minister of Labor, not the minister in the Ministry of Public Works, not the minister within the Ministry of Local Government, not the Minister of Education, not the Minister of Foreign Affairs, spent more than 10 minutes of their 35 minutes allotted time speaking to their portfolio. This must be seen as a travesty, and we must demand more. But then, how can we get substance from a group who seem intent on wallowing in the gutter, intent on bringing their lack of home training on full display for the world to see? As I pivot to my response to Budget 2024, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say to our public servants who work in every county, in every region, in every town, every NDC and indigenous village, that we on this side of the house are paying attention. We hear your concerns. We understand your plight. From those, Mr. Speaker, who are forced to compromise themselves just to ensure they do not lose their jobs and meager salaries, to those, Mr. Speaker, who are forced to participate in activities outside of their job description so that the government could pretend that people are interested in their activities and events, to those public servants who have to work in an environment subjected to ridicule and the belittling by persons in charge, and to those public servants who have chosen to leave our shores with all of their skills because they had to choose between being able to better take care of their families over love of country. We want them to know that we see them, we commiserate with them, and we understand their struggle. As one of our most prominent lawyers would say, better must come, and better will come, Mr. Speaker, when we get rid of this blight upon our nation. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, The government chose to blame a British journalist because our professional public servants are choosing to leave their poor working conditions, poor salaries and poor allowances and benefits, and very little room for redress for better paying jobs, better paying salaries and working conditions in other parts of the world. The journalist simply stated, and I quote, "We've heard a lot from the people of Guyana that we have been speaking to over the last couple of days, that this is the country with the fastest growing economy in the world. And yet a lot of them say they are yet to notice it. What do you say to that?" An open-ended question, Mr. Speaker, that would allow anyone to properly respond, citing their vision and work program. Instead, what we saw was what we have now become accustomed to by this administration: total arrogance and lacking anything of substance. The response was, and I quote, "Right now you are taking our nurses, you are taking our medical workers, you are taking our teachers. Why are you taking them? Why don't you train your own? If our nurses are so good, why don't you pay us for training them for you?" I have three major issues with this statement, Mr. Speaker. One, it assumes that our professional public servants who chose to leave did not have a say in their departure, but that somehow England and other countries came here and took our citizens. It belittles and dehumanizes our professionals in the most condescending manner, as though they have no agency. Second, it suggests that this government is not culpable at all for our trained public servants leaving. They have absolved themselves of any responsibility to the fact that hundreds of our teachers, nurses, doctors, and police officers and other public servants are either leaving the country or are choosing to leave the public service to find better employment in the private sector. To suggest that England should pay the government for training Guyanese workers again speaks to the thinking of the administration. Instead of sitting down and having discussions with the various unions and representatives of public servants to determine a way forward that would see our limited professionals remain, the myopic nature of this administration only allows them to pivot to focus on how much money they can get from another country because our citizens are choosing to go there. The reality, Mr. Speaker, that people are leaving because the PPP government is not treating them as human beings who deserve to be able to look after their families and themselves from livable salaries. They are leaving because the PPP government does not think they deserve a livable wage, adequate allowances, and benefits. Mr. Speaker, when a foreign country can decide to take a professional and their entire family in because the professional has the skill that they need, and also choose to provide training to the spouse of the professional so they too can find suitable employment, it should cause this government or any government to concede that you are choosing not to adequately compensate and treat our professionals with the dignity they deserve is to your own detriment. As this has led to you training for exploitation, it has led to you allowing the reduction of your professional capacity in all sectors. And it has led to you having no proper policies and plans to ensure that your human capital stay in the country. Mr. Speaker, somehow the administration has decided to push its head in the sand and ignore the fact that it does not matter how many schools, hospitals, and government buildings you build. If you do not have adequate human resources, then it is all for naught. The administration has decided to push its head in the sand, Mr. Speaker, and ignore that their governance and ideological model is negatively affecting the majority of persons in the country that you are attempting to lead. It is an abysmal look for specifically the Ministry of Public Service, the Ministry of Health, and in fact the entire government, that they can sit and be comfortable with the fact that so many public servants are leaving. If we are to effectively and efficiently develop as a country, we need to build capacity and retain our professionals, both in the public and private sector. It makes no sense to boast about how many people are coming into your country, as the minister with responsibility for finance was doing last Monday, when those same planes are taking hundreds of your citizens out of our country to greener pastures. People are fleeing due to the PPP's government's inability to lead properly, their inability to ensure that we retain our professionals and put the most vulnerable and the most needy first. However, Mr. Speaker, There may be another reason. On September 30th, 2023, a Starbucks News editorial titled, "Why Not Privatize Everything?" began by saying the following: "The signs have been clear since the first days of this administration. The privatization of public services is a policy. It is a path Guyana has been heading down for several decades as part of a laissez-faire approach to governance, a reverence for free market capitalism, and a tacit acknowledgement that successive administrations are plain incompetent at actually running stuff. Now it is being actively encouraged, and we are seeing the full side effect of this approach in our everyday lives." The article continues, and I quote, "The president seems perfectly happy to use taxpayers' money, a rather quaint term in this petrol,
You have to withdraw that
to pay
request.
private hospitals."
Please do.
So, guys, cleared the backlog of 5,000 echocardiograms and ultrasounds, rather than fixing the capacity of the public system. Kidney dialysis is already being outsourced to private facilities. It is clear what is going on here: the creation of a for-profit American-style healthcare system with all the greed, corruption, cronyism, and inequities that come along with it. We need no more evidence that this government is going in this direction than, just as with the education, that one of its first actions when coming into office was to remove all corporate taxes from private hospitals. And while the president laments how nurses are being lured away by developed countries, he is utterly silent on how many have gone to the private sector along with doctors and technicians. So you see, Mr. Speaker, maybe, just maybe, the issue we have is that the ideology and philosophy that underpins the plans and policies of this government is the one that is far from people-centered. It is in fact anti-working class and anti-nationalist. Mr. Speaker, laissez-faire economics include negative externality, income inequality, and monopoly. And I believe this is where we find ourselves today. Mr. Speaker, I want to make it clear that we on this side of the House intend to use the gains we have made due to our current abundance to ensure that all Guyanese have the life you deserve. There is simply no logical reason that can be made as to why all Guyanese people are not positively impacted in a tangible way by the resources that God has given to us. Alleviating poverty, alleviating conditions such as the working poor, alleviating any forms of labor discrimination would be our main priority. We believe in workers' rights. We believe that labor unions have the right to speak on the behalf of and represent the interests of workers. And we believe that there is no reason why, whether in the public service or in the private sector, employees should in 2024 not be able to feed their families and live comfortably. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, members of the nursing fraternity chose to show their discontent by staging industrial action, and somehow the collective wisdom of the Minister of Labor, the Minister of Legal Affairs, and the Vice President interpreted those actions as worthy of disciplinary action, vis-a-vis taking away their salaries. The response by the Minister of Labor and others who advised him on the best way to respond to nurses would send a signal to the entire nursing fraternity that they must condone and tolerate sexual harassment and disrespect by their supervisors in the workplace with no redress. How can any labor minister and attorney general sit and determine that industrial action is unlawful enough to go to court to defend it, and then state after the court ruled that the deductions from the salaries of the employees of the Ministry of Health were unlawful, that they will repeal the decision? It is no wonder that our nurses are choosing to leave. Mr. Speaker, in my previous budget, I spoke at length about what is required to professionalize the public service. In 2022, I highlighted the obvious, that the then Minister of Public Service had no clue what was expected of her and what she should be doing as Minister of Public Service to better the lives of public servants. This is now evident in the fact that she has quickly chosen to leave the ministry to head another. It is my hope that she fares better at this new ministry. I again call on the new minister, who has responsibility for the public service, to initiate actions to promote and enforce a depoliticized, meritocratic, efficient, and citizen-oriented service through public service regulations and code of conduct, performance management, and rationalized, fair, and consistent pay structures associated with written job descriptions. I must note that they have begun to do the latter. Mr. Speaker, as I turn to labor, it must be reported that in Guyana, there are about 275,000 individuals in the working age population, but the actual labor force is considerably smaller. We as a country recorded the second lowest labor force participation rate in the region, standing at approximately 60.4% in 2020. It is thus imperative for the government to guarantee that the Guyanese workforce receives substantial training for those lacking skills, retaining for individuals whose skills may not align with economic demands, and upskilling for those with skills but facing challenges in an increasingly competitive environment. I heard the Minister of Labor wax lyrical about the training program at the Board of Industrial Training. While it is quite commendable that they are attempting to train all citizens, the question that I have been asking since the conceptualization of GOAL and now GROW, and also what is happening at BIT, is what data is being utilized to determine the areas in which persons should be trained, and what mechanisms are in place to ensure that there is as close as possible to 100% retention. Mr. Speaker, I was surprised that even the Minister of Foreign Affairs found time to speak glowingly about the GOAL program. But this program, just like the BIT program and most other programs conceptualized by the PPP, go without a most important component: monitoring and evaluation. I am convinced that no one in the PPP likes to hear those words, because monitoring and evaluation of projects would give you more information than the PPP require or desire. They are anti-education, anti-feasibility studies, and anti-monitoring and evaluation. Mr. Speaker, no government interested in proper planning and proper use of our country's resources would shy away from any mechanism that would ensure that the outcomes expected are actually achieved. Is there any data that shows the retention rate of persons in the BIT program and the GOAL program? Is there any data that shows the completion rate of the students in their program? Is there any data that shows how many persons have been able to gain employment with a new learned skill or knowledge? Mr. Speaker, on July 13, 2023, I submitted a number of questions to the House for some questions to the Minister of Labor to determine what data was being used to make certain that decisions being made in relation to growing, training, and adequately preparing our labor force are being made using sound data. Mr. Speaker, the questions I asked included the following. Can the Honourable Minister inform the House whether the Ministry of Labor has conducted a skills gap analysis of the local market at any time between 2020 and June 16, 2023? As I attempted to ask a specific question, Mr. Speaker, can the Honourable Minister further state why the Ministry of Labor has established and implemented the Labor Market Information System? It appeared that for some reason, the Speaker forgot the cap he was supposed to be wearing and decided he needed to be a part of the question answering segment by stating the following. I made a comment on 2 interventions about arming ourselves with the facts. The Speaker of this House further stated, this is not an insinuation, this is a matter of fact. Labor market information systems have existed for decades in this country by law, and annually it is done. I am speaking as an authority having served in this ministry. However, during the budget debate, the minister within the Ministry of the Presidency with responsibility for finance stated, and I quote, the government will develop an integrated labor market information system that is user-friendly and easily accessible. This is intended to ameliorate the mismatch between available jobs and persons seeking employment. Further to that, Mr. Speaker, the 2022 audit report highlighted that 1.9 million was budgeted in 2022 for the Labor Market Information System Commission, but the Labor Market Information System Commission was not functioning during that period, so the subvention could not be released. So, Mr. Speaker, I would leave you to deduce whether the basis for my question was valid. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, I am disappointed in a particular former Minister of Labor who one would expect to have authority on the matter, but apparently seems to have no clue on what he spoke about on December 19, 2023, when he attempted to question my preparation before asking said question. However, Mr. Speaker, I am convinced that the Minister with responsibility for finance got his information on the progress of the labor market information system from the Minister of Labor, who obviously knows little. But may I inform this House that the labor market information system is much more than this, as the labor market information system also provides an essential basis for employment and labor policies and inform the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of policies that are better focused and targeted. And while I am not certain of the scope of works of the Labor Market Commission, it is my hope that the work of the Commission would be to do research, analysis, and forecasts. As an agency such as that, we would have the principal responsibility of analyzing the labor market, forecasting trends, understanding labor market gaps, collaborating with agencies such as the Bureau of Statistics, involving the Central Recruitment and Manpower Agency, and advising the government on policy. Mr. Speaker, according to an IOM report on Guyana, there is an urgent need to conduct a demand and supply analysis of the labor market in Guyana. This is necessary to understand the current pool of labor which Guyana currently has and the skills required by the market. The opportunity ought to be used to understand the demand for skills in the medium term from employers. This will enable recruiters and the government to advertise jobs and promote Guyana. This will ensure that Guyana does not have the unintended consequence of attracting migrant workers where the skills they possess may be in oversupply. So, Mr. Speaker, while it is laudable to speak about training of our people, decisions and policies made at the level of government needs to be based on something more than just the gut feeling of those who purport to lead us. Mr. Speaker, to stand and boast about the largest budget ever when a large section of the population is left to suffer due to your poor attempts at governance, your incompetence, your mediocre attempt at policy formation, and your inability to create and sell to the Guyanese people a vision that we can all agree to and work towards is ludicrous. Mr. Speaker, while the MPs come here and boast about the largest budget ever, the Guyanese people still have to endure inflation and high cost of living. Those are the challenges. And frankly speaking, they are all man-made challenges created by a group of people who are not allowed to think for themselves, but follow the instruction of one man whose scope is limited to corruption, nepotism, racism, bullyism, and narcissism.
Okay, you have to withdraw all of those, and after you do that, someone has to get you 5 minutes.
Thank you. Comment, Speaker, I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, honorable member. That's Ms. Halley, please. You've been doing really good.
So guided, sir.
So why you want to spoil it at this time? Go ahead, please.
So guided.
Withdraw and let's go.
So guided, so guided.
You start now with your 5 minutes.
What may surprise you, Mr. Speaker, is that I just, I can read and I love reading. Thank you very much. Is that I just read a section of my 2022 budget. What is obviously not surprising is that nothing has changed in 2024. And thus the title of the budget, Staying the Course, would only be seen by the majority of Guyanese as a commitment to mediocrity, unscrupulousness, ambiguity, dishonesty, and exclusion. Of course, we look at the editorials written by Starbuck News over the last year, would paint a picture of the issues and concerns that this country and its peoples have had to contend with during 2023. Who could forget the shame that Charandas Prasad, I probably should not have said his name, sorry, brought into the citizens, I withdraw that, citizens of this country, as we became aware that despite his violent, condescending remarks to an Indian woman on the continent, he was still permitted to host a farewell gathering for himself and try to explain his despicable behavior by saying, and I quote, "Well, if you are in a fight and you pick a fight with a man, he should say, 'No, you are a woman, I'm not going to fight you. You want equality? Let's go. Let's go to the fight and see what happens.'" This is how the PPP intends to stay the course. On January 14, 2023, Starbuck News started its article with a stark increase in vegetables, provisions, chicken, and eggs from the market, stating in its first line that it's not clear how genuinely concerned the administration is towards the plight of poor people and the daily stress they are under over the current cost of living crisis. But we all know that those prices have further increased, Mr. Speaker, since then. But according to the Honorable Member Ashley Singh and VP, they are intent on staying the course. On January 16, 2023, another Starbuck News editorial starts by saying, as much as the police use statistics to spin the narrative that crime is under control, their efforts are undermined by the bloody reprisals and characterize the underworld where hitmen operate with impunity. But somehow we are supposed to stay the course. On October 6, 2023, another editorial begins. President, oh my goodness, I should not have said that. The man who holds the highest office in this country is not a man to be inconvenienced by legal niceties. So there he was on Monday in defiance of the Constitution, the Trade Union Recognition Act, and a number of international labor organization conventions, meeting the teachers over the head of their union. The purpose apparently of the gathering was to discuss all matters which concern teachers, not excluding salaries and allowances, even though that is a subject in which the government has been engaged in negotiations with the union. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, on September 19, another editorial begins. One of the primary reasons why we are now confronted by numerous long-standing law and order-related anomalies is almost certainly linked to the seeming elevation of the Guyana Police Force above official criticism or vigorous reprimand and the serious pursuit of corrective action. One can think of no other reason why forms of police behavior that pass for law enforcement, but which are themselves blatant acts of lawlessness, are allowed to persist with the slightest hint of corrective intervention. But somehow we are supposed to remain on course. This, Mr. Speaker, is a reality that we face as a nation. We can stand and speak about $1.1 trillion, but the reality is that we are failing our citizens. Most of the social ills in our society is increasing. The four horsemen sat around the coffee table and thought that staying the course is the best way to go. Mr. Speaker, I will end with Proverbs 3:27-30. Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thine hand to do it. Say not unto thy neighbor, go and come again, and tomorrow I will give thee, when thou hast it by thee. Devise not evil against thy neighbor, seeing he dwelleth securely by thee. Strive not with a man without cause, if he has done nothing, or he has done thee no harm. The people of this country are crying out, and the PPP has decided to stay the course.
Yes. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, the Honorable Sonia Pearl.
Mr. Speaker,